Okay, so last in this group of articles that I have, because if I did all the articles that go into Trump, I would be doing videos 24/7. So, this one. Trump tested the limits on using the military at home. If elected again, he plans to go further. Oh joy. This is the same guy who used the military to get protesters out of the way so he could cross the street from the White House to a church so he could hold up a Bible upside down. So, yeah, that sounds great. All right. During his first term as president, Donald Trump tested the limits on how he could use the military to achieve policy goals. If given a second term, the Republicans and his allies are preparing to go much further, reimagining the military as an all-powerful tool to deploy on U.S. soil. He has pledged to recall thousands of American troops from overseas and station them at the U.S. border with Mexico. He has explored using troops for domestic policy priorities such as deportations and confronting civil unrest. He has talked of weeding out military officers who are ideologically opposed to him, which I had discussed in a previous video. Trump's vision amounts to a potentially dramatic shift in the role of the military in U.S. society, carrying grave implications for both the country's place in the world and the restraints that have traditionally been placed on domestic use of the military. And basically, if you think that the police are too militarized and they're actually taught to fear the people that they're supposed to protect. So, if you think that they're too militarized with how they go about handling even the most basic interactions with citizens, imagine the military, because they aren't taught to stand up and protect the citizens of a city. Their job is to attack enemies. So if you have a problem with the way the police act now, the military is going to be so much worse. As Trump's campaign heads into its final stretch against Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris, he is promising forceful action against immigrants who do not have permanent legal status. Now, notice that is not necessarily illegal. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding the term. That's a possibility. But I don't know, there's wiggle room for people who are undocumented for other reasons. And how far does this go? Speaking in Colorado on Friday, the Republican described the city of Aurora as a war zone. I think the people of Aurora would be shocked to hear that. Controlled by Venezuelan gangs, again, not happening, which I mentioned in my first video in this series on immigration. Even though authorities say that a single block of the Denver suburb and the area is safe again. So, yeah, it was one incident, one time, and apparently now the whole city is a shit show, according to Trump. I will rescue Aurora in every town that has been invaded and conquered, Trump said at the rally. We will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them out of our country. Now again, if all he was doing was going after those who broke the law and deported those that broke the law, that's fine. Nobody has a problem with that. I mean, you break the law, of course there's going to be consequences. I mean, duh. But my question is, which immigrants is he going to go after? He mentioned the Venezuelan gang. He went after Haitian immigrants who are here legally. So, what do they have in common? They're not white. So, what about the white immigrant who is committing crimes? Are you going to be tough on them too? Are they bloodthirsty criminals? Or is it just black and brown people? And his "I will rescue Aurora in every town that has been invaded and conquered" sounds suspiciously like his declaration that he will protect women, that women don't need to worry about anything, least of it abortion, that he's going to protect us, and blah 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 blah. This creepy guy who's clingy, who just wants this girl to notice him. Same thing here. He wants people to see him as strong. So, in an interview aired Sunday on Fox News Channel, Trump was asked about the potential of outside agitators disrupting Election Day, and he then pivoted to what he called the enemy from within. I'm sorry, sweetheart, the enemy from within, and I didn't mention this earlier, the enemy from within is talking about people who were born here. Like the call is coming from inside the house type thing. It's not that people from the outside came in and then they became an enemy. No, that refers to domestic terrorism. Thank you very much. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, Trump said. He added, "We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics, and I think they're the big, and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen." That poor boy is just so obsessed with the military. He wants his toys. I'm sorry, if you love the military so much, why did you get 5 deferments? Because of supposedly bone spurs? It's amazing how many people are just thinking the military is just the greatest thing, but when you ask them if they actually joined, they would say no. And they would come up with some excuse as to why. I mean, if you think the military is so great, you'd think you'd want to sign up, right? Trump has repeatedly invoked the phrase enemy from within in recent speeches. On Saturday, he used it to refer to Representative Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California, a prominent Trump critic who oversaw the congressional investigation that led to Trump's first impeachment. Schiff is now running for the Senate. The former president and his advisors are developing plans to shift the military's priorities and resources, even at a time when wars are raging in Europe and the Middle East. Trump's top priority in his platform, known as Agenda 47, is to implement hardline measures at the U.S.-Mexico border by moving thousands of troops currently stationed overseas to that border. He is also pledging to declare war on cartels and deploy the Navy in a blockade that would board and inspect ships for fentanyl. Trump also has said he will use the National Guard and possibly the military as part of the operation to deport millions of immigrants who do not have permanent legal status. Yeah, that part really bothers me because at what point do they qualify? I mean, even immigrants who come here legally, they don't have green cards right away. So when do you get this permanent legal status that would satisfy Trump? While Trump's campaign declined to discuss the details of those plans, of course, including how many troops he would ship from overseas assignments to the border, his allies are not shy about casting the operation as a sweeping mission that would use the most powerful tools of the federal government in new and dramatic ways. There could be an alliance of the Justice Department, Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense. Those three departments have to be coordinated in a way that maybe has never been done before, said Ron Vitiello, who worked as the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement under Trump. While both Democratic and Republican presidential administrations have long used military resources at the border, the plans would be a striking escalation of the military's involvement in domestic policy. Advocates for human rights and civil liberties have grown alarmed. They are promising to use the military to do mass raids of American families at a scale that harken back to some of the worst things our country has done, says Todd Schulte, president of FWD.US, an immigration advocacy organization. In Congress, which has the power to restrict the use of military force through funding and other authorizations, Republicans are largely on board with Trump's plans. The reason I support Donald Trump is he will secure the border on day one. Now that could be misinterpreted as being a dictator. No, he's got to secure the border, said Representative Joe Wilson, Republican, South Carolina, a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Except for one problem, Sunshine. He literally said he will be a dictator on day one. Now, granted, he said just on day one, but let's face it. Who is ever a dictator for just one day? So, and based on my previous video on what he would do to curb political dissent, yeah, he wants to be a dictator, not just on day one, but always. Now, and he's going to secure the border. Okay. Why didn't he do that the first time he was president? I mean, he keeps saying that about Harris. Why hasn't she done this? Why hasn't she done that? She's in power. You were in power for 4 years. Why didn't you do it? Many Republicans argue that Trump's rhetoric on immigration reflects reality and points to the need for military action. Except for the fact that immigration has gone down. So, what? I mean, not to mention the fact that there was a bipartisan bill in Congress, and Republicans killed it because Trump told them to. So again, if he was really, really concerned about protecting people instead of being seen as the country's savior and a strong man, he would have allowed that bill to go through. He wouldn't have stopped Republicans from voting for it. There is a case that this is an invasion, said North Carolina Senator Ted Budd, a Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. You look at 10 million people, many of which are not here for a better future. How do you know that? And unfortunately, it's made it necessary. This is a problem that the Biden administration, Harris administration have created. Okay, first off, it's not like immigrants started committing crimes under the Biden administration and that before then they were well behaved. Number two, how do you know that many are not here for a better future? I mean, even the ones who commit crimes are probably here for a better future, and things just don't go the way they planned. Now, again, I'm not excusing criminal behavior, but we don't know. Maybe they were all here for a better future. Yes, some maybe came here with the idea of, you know, pretending that they wanted to when they wanted to do something bad. I mean, that's always a possibility that there are a few who do that. But to say many, I don't know about many. Still, Trump's plan to move military assets from abroad could further inflame tensions within the GOP between those hawkish on foreign policy and Republicans who promote Trump's brand of America First isolationism. Republican Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, insisted Trump would not move active duty troops to the border, even though Trump's platform clearly states he would. Yeah, if there's one thing that these Republicans are really good at is, and actually his cult members as well, that they just believe what they think that Trump will do, and rather than what he literally will says he will do. Like those people who think he'll help them with the economy, even though he said he wants tariffs across the board. He now, which made you wonder if he understood what tariffs meant, which I just saw in the New York Times that he actually does know what tariffs mean, that he is using this as a strong arm tactic to get more countries to make their stuff here. So, or for those who don't believe that he, for those you women who believe that he has your best interest at heart, he is now leaving the door open for a national abortion ban. So, yeah. I mean, a lot of the people who think that probably already think that abortion is this horrible evil who nobody should get no matter what. Of course, they also have this narrow idea of what an abortion is, but that's a different story. So maybe hearing that won't sway you. But yeah, Republican leaders and the cult members seem to be under the impression that Trump doesn't actually mean what he says. I know better how to interpret what he says because I just can't accept that he's saying this insane shit. In the Senate, where more traditional Republicans still hold sway, Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker, the top Republican on the Armed Services Committee, issued a statement encouraging the Department of Defense to assist with border security, but adding that their effort needs to be led by the Department of Homeland Security. Trump's designs for the military may not stop at the border. As Trump completes a campaign marked by serious threats to his life, his aides already made an unusual request for military aircraft to transport him amid growing concerns over threats from Iran. You know, that is a problem of his own making. Now, obviously, I'm not encouraging Iran to kill him. I'm hoping that cholesterol will do that. But I'm not encouraging that, but he did kill a top Iranian general. So, should anyone be surprised that Iran is threatening him? No. Now, do I blame him for using the military to protect him? Well, considering the Secret Service has their issues right now, I can see why he's relying on the military, so I'm not going to criticize that. But yeah, it's unusual, so. I mean, I heard that since the attempt on his life at his golf course, he stopped playing golf. He's going to only continue till after the election, which leads me to believe that he doesn't think he's going to win. Because, I mean, granted, his Secret Service detail would expand if he was president, so maybe he's banking on that. I don't know. During his first term, while riots and protests against police brutality roiled the nation, Trump also pushed to deploy military personnel. Top military officers, such as then Senator Mark Milley, resisted those plans, including issuing a memo that stressed that every member of the military swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution and the values embedded within it. In other words, you support the Constitution. You do not support and protect Donald Trump. Trump's potential actions could likely require him to invoke wartime or emergency powers, such as carrying out mass deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, a 1798 law, or quelling unrest under the Insurrection Act, an 1807 law that allows the president to deploy the military domestically and against U.S. citizens. It was last used by President George H.W. Bush in 1992 during rioting in Los Angeles after police officers beat the black motorist Rodney King. And how did that end up going? And actually, I do remember that. And LA was burning, but it wasn't just because of the protesters. So, yeah. All right. Now I talked in my first video in this series about the Alien Enemies Act. Who the hell are we at war with? We are not at war with anybody. So how can you enforce that? Quelling unrest under the Insurrection Act. Okay. Why do I get the feeling? Now, interestingly, I don't think if those violent protesters were white, somehow I don't think that he would have considered this an insurrection. Because, well, January 6th happened. I mean, he encouraged January 6th. And guess who wasn't deployed? And guess who was treated well by the police officers, even as they were getting their asses kicked? Ahead of a potential second term for Trump, Democrats in Congress tried to update presidential powers like the Insurrection Act, but found little success. Of course, because the Republicans probably stopped them at every turn. Just like they stopped them from passing the immigration reform, why they stopped them from doing pretty much anything because, Republicans have decided ever since Obama that they're just going to prevent the Democrats from doing anything. That's left them instead issuing dire warnings that Trump now has fewer guardrails on how he could use the military. He has shown an ability to bend institutions to his goals, from a Supreme Court willing to reconsider long-standing interpretations of presidential powers to a military scrubbed of officers and leaders likely to push back on his plans. And again, he wants to do that for all government institutions, not just the military. But, that shows you how short-sighted Republicans are. Because they so want things to go their way and they're basically assuring themselves that somehow Trump is an aberration, they can go back to their usual fuckery, that they don't know what to do now. So they didn't want to put additional guardrails because, they can't give a win to Democrats at all because they'll break out in hives. How Biden was able to pass what he has with the Inflation Reduction Act, with I'm blanking, with the infrastructure bill. So yeah. And yeah, having a military that would listen to Trump no matter what he says, that's frightening. Could you imagine? I mean, we already talked about in the last video about quashing political dissent. How do you think he's going to do that? He's going to do that through government agencies and probably through the military. So yeah, great. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Kentucky, who introduced legislation to update the Insurrection Act, said the plans illuminate Donald Trump's total misunderstanding of the United States military as a force for national defense, not for his personal preferences to demagogue an issue. But you see, Donald Trump is a huge narcissist. So, obviously, everything is meant for him. I mean, who would have thought that there could be other people involved? It's all about him. But Representative Dan Crenshaw, Republican of Texas, underscored how many in his party have grown comfortable with deploying the military to confront illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Whatever fixes the border, I think we're okay with, he said. You had a solution. Trump told you not to pass it because he wanted to campaign on it. So, are you really interested in fixing the border? Really? Or do you just want to treat people who are desperate to flee whatever situation they're fleeing? You just want to see them being torn to shreds by a military simply because they see them as an enemy and as not people who are desperate. So yeah, that's just great. And so as you can see, all three of my videos weave together. I just did not want to do one massive video because I didn't think you guys wanted to watch an hour and a half long video on different topics, whereas this way you can choose which topic you're interested in. So anyway, with that, I will see you guys in the next video.